about Sweden last night, in which he appeared to reference a non-existent incident. Mr. Trump tweeting tonight, "My statement as to what's happening in Sweden was in reference to a story that was broadcast on Fox News concerning immigrants and Sweden." CNN White House correspondent Athena Jones is in West Palm Beach, Florida, near Mar-a-Lago, where the president is spending the weekend. So, Athena, you were at that rally last night where the president made these comments. Was it clear he was referring to a Fox News report?
Hi, Pamela. No, it was not at all clear that he was referring to a news report of any kind. He seemed to be referring to a terror incident that took place in Sweden on Friday night. Let's just go ahead and play what he had to say, and then you can decide what it sounds like he was trying to talk about. Let's play that.
You look at what's happening in Germany. You look at what's happening last night in Sweden. Sweden. Who would believe this? Sweden. They took in large numbers. They're having problems like they never thought possible.
And so he groups Sweden in with other countries where there have been terror attacks. There, of course, has not been a major terror attack in Sweden. The president later clarifying that he was referring to a report he saw Friday night, a report on Fox News. Here is that segment that aired on Friday night. Go ahead and play that. We'll talk about it on the other side.
Perhaps no nation on earth is more committed to accepting foreign migrants and refugees than Sweden. 2016 alone, the country accepted more than 160,000 asylum seekers, despite having a population of less than 10 million people. Only 500 of these migrants were able to get jobs in Sweden. But if these arrivals aren't able to work, they're at least able to commit crimes.
That segment went on to include an interview with a documentarian who says that the Swedish government has been covering up a series of violent crimes committed by refugees. What's clear here is that the president is an avid viewer of cable news. He gets a lot of his information from cable news, but this lack of precision, the fact that he made it sound like he was talking about a specific terror incident, the fact that he likes to repeat things that he's been told or has heard without really checking them, that proved problematic. It left a lot of people scratching their heads, including a former prime minister of Sweden who tweeted at him, what is he smoking? Questions abound. Now, at least we have some clarity on where he got the information. But the fact of the matter is the president's words matter, and there are people all over the world who are essentially hanging on his every word. And so it's important that what he says has some backing, and to be clear on what he's getting at. Pamela?
And we're told that the Embassy of Sweden just responded to the president's tweet saying that he learned about this on Fox News. We're going to talk about this with our panel. Athena Jones, thank you very much for that. Athena there in West Palm Beach, Florida. And I want to bring in that panel, Julian Zelizer, historian and professor at Princeton and author of The Fierce Urgency of Now, Michael Daly, special correspondent for the Daily Beast, and Lynn Sweet. She is the Washington bureau chief for the Chicago Sun-Times. Julian, to you first. As I just pointed out, the Swedish embassy has responded to President Trump's clarification, tweeting, "We look forward to informing the U.S. administration about Swedish immigration and integration policies." Do you think President Trump understands the possible ramifications that can come from his statements, particularly when he's talking about other countries?
Well, I don't know if he understands it or not, but he and his people surrounding him need to. Presidential rhetoric matters, and a few words can make a big difference. And here we see, with one speech, with a little part of that speech, he's now caused this diplomatic back and forth. And we've seen historically how the words of presidents can have consequences. So he'll need to do more than simply hear a story in passing and then repeat that in a national address, which it ended up being.
And Lynn, what do you say to those who blame the media for making a mountain out of a molehill, for taking his words so literally, as in last night? I mean, what do you say to those supporters of Trump who claim that?
Well, I say to those supporters, the accuracy of a statement is still something that is of value. And the Swedish newspaper Aftonbladet, a leading newspaper, actually printed something in English with the headline and saying, in English, "This happened in Sweden last night, Mr. President." And they went on to list incidents, including a driving while intoxicated in Stockholm, to show that there was no terrorist incident last night. But to your point, I cannot say here that I have the complete answer in talking about what I think is a delegitimization attempt by the president on the news. But I know that in the meantime, what we do is when a president or an alderman say things that are not accurate, it is the press's role to try and put out the facts for people to have in their availability. And that's what we do. And we're in a new era here with President Trump. But I think to your question, this is what journalists do, and this is what we've been doing.
And the irony is that just yesterday, you know, he was going after the media, saying the media is America's enemy. CNN was included in that group, and yet he's citing something that he saw on cable news, and he's someone who, of course, could get clarification on anything he wants, right? When it comes to matters that are sensitive, such as talking about another country. Michael, what is your take on that?
I think, you know, there's nothing new about this guy. I mean, his family's of German extraction. If you look at Art of the Deal, he says he's Swedish. I mean, when he said Sweden, do you believe it? I'm thinking, yeah, I remember when he said Sweden. And, you know, if you take an accurate book about him, which was Wayne Barrett's book, was the definitive book that was substantiated by the New Jersey Gaming Commission, I remember when he was serving jury duty, I happened to be sitting next to him. I made myself sit next to him back at the beginning of all this. And I asked him about Wayne Barrett. He said, the most dishonest person ever. And that just, you know, it isn't like he's changed. And with these tweets, I think you got to think about why he's doing it. I mean, I saw him just sitting jury duty with no one paying attention to him, and that was not easy for him. And I think of him up in the White House after business hours. He's sitting by himself. If there's anybody around there, it's Mr. President, which is what they'd say no matter who's the president. And there's this thing where he can send this tweet and get the whole world talking about him. I mean, we're all talking about it. We're not really talking about his policies. We're not talking about what he's doing. We're talking about Donald Trump. And you go anywhere in America, you get in the subway, you get on the bus, you go out to Queens, you go to Brooklyn, you go on the other side of the Hudson River, all they're talking about is Donald Trump. And every time it dies down, he comes out with a couple of tweets and everybody starts talking again.
Okay,
but
so
there's nothing new about it.
I want to actually pull up this tweet from Chelsea Clinton in response to what the president said. She tweeted, "What happened in Sweden Friday night? Did they catch the Bowling Green massacre perpetrators?" Referring to what Kellyanne Conway said about a non-existent event in Bowling Green. But Lynn, is there a potential risk to Democrats focusing on what Trump is saying versus what he is doing and signing?
Well, yes, and that was very, you know, we're raising the level of, I guess, of repartee on Twitter. Here's the most important thing I think we should be watching for. President Trump is delivering a speech to a joint session of Congress at the end of the month. If this was any other administration, we would be spending the weekend talking about how the president and his aides were going over the presidential address where he addresses the members of Congress in the House chamber for the first time. We're not even talking about this. So I think the idea that soon he will have to translate his ideas into legislation he supports or doesn't support, policies that he's either going to urge Republicans to embrace or not, and his next big speech of note, as I said, will be a joint session to Congress. They don't call it a State of the Union when a president is in the first year because there's not time to assess the State of the Union. So we'll see if his aides even start talking about the work that they're doing on what will be a very significant speech, not in a rally, not a friendly audience, but with dozens and dozens of, even hundreds of Democrats in the room.
Well, do you think, I'm just curious on the point you're making, do you think this is intentional on the part of President Trump to sort of deflect from focusing on that?
I think it's more. Sorry.
Go ahead, Julian.
No,
Go ahead.
Julian.
I mean, I think there is the politics of distraction, but this argument about Sweden is related to his argument about immigration and refugees. And he is building support both for an executive order that's been in the press today to tighten controls over immigration, and he's going to reissue an executive order on the refugee ban. And that's where the comments about Sweden actually fit into that speech. And so I think that's where the rhetoric does matter, because he's trying to nurture support with his base and even beyond his base for why these policies need to stand. And that's why they have to be taken seriously beyond simply being a distraction.
And just quickly, Julian, just for context, I think that's important. It is clear this president is hyper aware of the press that covers him and watching cable news. I mean, Sweden's a prime example. He's watching Fox, got that information, then went to this rally and said it. How does that stack up to past presidents and how much they consume the media that covers them?
That's not new. Lyndon Johnson used to have all three networks running in the Oval Office so he could see how he was being covered on issues like Vietnam. He was destroyed when Walter Cronkite turned against the war. And there's many examples of this. So all presidents are consumed with the news. Most presidents, though, get their information somewhere other than simply the news. They confirm, they look at the investigations that are put before them, and nor do they set out to attack the media as an institution as a main item of their first 100 days. So those are the differences, even though this is a common problem that presidents confront, how they are covered.
Michael, final word to you.
I don't think he's that deliberate. I think you're talking about a guy with pretty meager inner resources, and I just don't think that he plans that far. I just think it's of the moment with him. It's what grabs him of the moment. I don't think he's sitting there going, well, if I'll do this, I'll get the press to do this, or I'll raise my base or this. It's just like, let's see what happens. I mean, before Twitter, there would be a guy who sounded very much like Donald Trump, would call up and would say he was either John Barron, right, or John Miller. And he would say, I hear that Donald is doing this, and Donald is going out with this, and Donald is doing this. And then the next day it'd be in Page 6. So, I mean, this is like...
Because he was impersonating as a
gone global
person. Yeah, just for context
well,
there.
He sounded. Well, I'm trying to be not fake news here, but everybody I know who ever heard that voice, it sounded an awful lot like Donald Trump, and it's just, and it actually, in one deposition, he admitted that he used that name sometimes, but I just think it's that gone global. I mean, and it's very difficult to compare him to any other president because that's not what you're dealing with here. That's not who this is. But when it starts turning serious is when you see the people who are affected by that. I mean, I was at a mass at 6 a.m. this morning out in Corona, Queens, and it's packed. It's all with the restaurant workers are going to go make everybody else's brunch. They're going to mass, and they're scared. I mean, they're all Nicaraguans, I'm sorry, I get going on this.
No, I know you're passionate. You're passionate about it, Michael, for sure. Well, thank you to the three of you for coming on. Michael Daly, Julian Zelizer, Lynn Sweet. We do appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
And still to come, as